Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's episode of Rebecca and Rebecca, where we love books, but we also love authors. And today's one of our favorite days where we get to interview one of our authors here. But my name is Rebecca Yager, and my partner in crime from Indiana is Rebecca Reed. How are you, Rebecca?
I'm doing okay. I have a sinusy thing. So if I sound a little off, it's not because I'm not excited. It's because I don't know, things.
She
So it's good.
thinks it's
Yes.
going around.
Yeah.
Well, we are welcoming today a fellow Texan. So, Rebecca, you are surrounded by Texans today.
I
In
know.
fact,
Well,
Paula
this
and
time of
I
year
live.
is by Indiana, so it's okay.
That's true. We had Colleen last time or a couple months ago, and yes, I was surrounded by Indianans. But now you get us Texans, and Paula and I do know each other. We live across the DFW Metroplex from each other, but we want to say hi to Paula Peckham. Paula, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to read your bio and embarrass you, and then we'll get started on our conversation. We'll talk about your book, Protected, which Rebecca and I reviewed earlier this month, and talk about what's coming next for you and all kinds of fun things. So let's get started. All right. Paula Peckham is a fifth generation Texan. She graduated from the University of Texas in Arlington and taught math at high school level for 19 years. She and her husband, John, who have 4 children and 10 grandchildren, divide their time between their home in Texas and their casita in Rio Bravo, Mexico. Her debut novel, Protected, was an ACFW Genesis semifinalist in 2020. Book 2 in the series is called A Father's Gift, and that placed third in the 2023 CELO Award contest. And book 3, Accepted, which is already out, also ready to go. Read it. Several articles of hers have appeared in the Journal and the Guide magazines. She has contributions in the 2021 releases Christmas Love Through the Ages and Texas Heirloom Ornament. She serves as president of the ACFW DFW local chapter, and she has spoken all kinds of places as well. So, a teacher, author, former teacher, retired teacher, author, missionary. Gosh, Paula, you're busy these days, but
I
welcome.
agree. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I mentioned off air that Rebecca's gonna like this first thing that you said you wanted to be a veterinarian when you grew up, and you like the smell of horses.
I
Is that
do.
true?
I do like the smell of horses. To me, horses, they smell different from like cows or dogs. I think it has something to do with what they eat, maybe. But to me, a horse smells bright. I love horses.
Me too. I love horses. I've had horses all my life. So that was your surprise, I see.
Well,
Um,
I tease Rebecca a lot because there's always something about horses in a lot of the books we read, and so we always have
yeah,
to go out and discuss horses.
it's true. Yeah. Yeah, riding is it's something I miss because I don't have any horses anymore. So I love to read stories that include horses. And so, of course, this book, being Western based, obviously there were animals in it, not just horses, but some oxen and a some other animals. Can you tell us about some of those other animals that showed up, maybe without giving anything away? That was so much fun.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to disengage from Accepted because Accepted has animals too. Like they're kind of a funny character. So let's see. We have a dog and we have a cow. They find a cow on the
Yes.
prairie. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah,
I like to
yeah.
put animals in the stories because people like animals and if you
No,
show your character being kind to an animal, then that makes people be like, "Oh, that's nice." So helps
yeah.
them
I loved
be likable.
I loved when the cow showed up. I just I was like, "Oh my goodness." It was perfect.
Yes, it was
Rebecca,
fun.
You're easily entertained these days.
I know. I did though. I was like, "Oh, look at that. It's a cow." And then they talked about not taking it. And I'm like, "Yes, you have to take the
You
cow." And I'm
can't
like,
leave it there.
"Can't
Something
keep
will
the
eat it.
cow."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Paula, I think I enjoyed the book Protected, partially because it took place in Texas. So I was happy with that. And it's part of the San Antonio series, one of my favorite cities. But was there anything, how did you get drawn into historicals or the Westerns? Was there anything that caught your attention that drew you that way as you embarked on
Well,
writing?
um, when I am a reader, I enjoy reading. Well, I like reading romance. I mean, I read everything, but as a younger person, romance was kind of my go-to. And so I knew I wanted to write a romance, but I also, if you're not from Texas, you probably are aware of this already, but we're kind of obnoxious about being Texan. And so, of course, Texas is amazing. So it has to be in the story. you know, I mean, I'm sure your state is just perfectly fine, but it's not Texas. So I knew it was going to be in Texas. Plus, I know Texas. And so, it's easy to describe your setting and make it be authentic because you have those little details, you know. Um, and I like the historical part of it. I realized in college, I mean, I didn't realize this before then, but in college when I was working on projects, we have to do those group things and they assign a part to everybody. And the first time I was assigned to do the researching part, I was kind of like, oh, great. You stuck me with the bad part, but I really enjoyed it, which was a surprise. And so I knew I would like doing the research. And so, um, make it be a cowboy story because cowboys are fun and it'll have horses. And so, yeah,
That that works. And I wouldn't say Texans are obnoxious. We're just very proud of our state, right? We're vocal about
there we
that.
are.
And you tell everyone, but it's okay.
We're vocal. Well,
I I think it's awesome. I mean, I write a lot of my I mean, I use a lot of fantasies, so I can't really but I do use Indiana in my fantasy stories too. So I get exactly what you're talking about. And San Antonio is a phenomenal
Oh,
city. I mean,
yeah.
I've visited, so it was very much easy to um, get the feel of the story and what Texas is all about. Um, from what I knew about San Antonio made it a lot more vivid for me, but I
Oh,
really
cool.
enjoyed that,
Yeah.
and I wanted to say too that it starts out with the wagon train, and I know that I was kind of like, I don't know if I wanna read a wagon train story, and when I first started, but it wasn't just a wagon train story, and it was so much more than a wagon train story. And, it starts out with that traumatic scene where they're having the funeral or whatever. They just got done with it, and it starts out there and just grows into this huge story. They get to San Antonio, a lot of things happen along the way, but then there's more. You don't because when you have a wagon train story, it's like usually it's just the part about the traveling, but this story doesn't just do that. You get there, and then there's more, and there's a whole bunch of things about them settling and all of that, and I loved some of the characters that were introduced when we got to San Antonio, especially Yadelli.
Yeah. Yeah,
She's
a lot of
amazing.
people like her. They keep telling me, "Write a story for Yadelli." It's like, okay, I have to do all this other stuff first, but I'll put it on the back burner.
you could write a
She was
prequel or
wonderful.
short
Yeah,
story of Adele,
Yeah.
But yeah, she's a good abuelita on there for Manny. Really fun. But Manny and Abby, and I think what we talked about in our review, which again Rebecca alluded to, it wasn't just a wagon train story. With Manny hiding disfiguring scars and Abby has to disguise herself as a woman for safety reasons. While on the trail, they kind of have identity issues, and I loved the depth of the characters with them. That discovering their new identity as they grew, as the romance carried on, and as they got to San Antonio. But there was really, yeah, it was interesting how you did that, the disguise on one end and the disfiguring where he wants to hide on the other end. So it was well done.
Thank you.
And it made for such an interesting contrast, and, you know, obviously, as you're going through the story, you know that he's going to find out, you know, eventually who she is, and then it's like, as a reader, I'm like, "Oh, how is he gonna react?" You know, is he gonna be so mad that he just stalks off? Is he gonna be understanding? Is he, you know, so that you really pull the reader in, start thinking about, you know, what's gonna happen and that. But there were a lot of twists and turns to this story as well. And I like how the characters that created issues early on came back later and you didn't switch the antagonist. I really like how you pulled those people back in and and gave them kind of a second run at it in a way,
They were
you know, where we
nasty. Your antagonists were nasty.
Yeah.
As you researched it, you mentioned research previously, were there any surprises? And as a fifth generation Texan, was it, which amazes me because I'm a military brat. So to be fifth generation,
Anything. Yeah.
just kind of blows
Yeah.
my mind. But were there any surprises in the research of Protected or any of the books in the San Antonio series? Anything that did you?
I think, well, it's so easy to get sucked down a little rabbit hole, you know, and I also, the first version of Protected, which I did not know anything about writing anything, no, nothing, total beginner. It was 145,000 words long. I had no idea that that was too much.
That's
Okay.
Rebecca to a T.
like, woo, I did not know. But what I realized, and this again goes back to that research, like everything I learned is like, oh, how interesting this is. Let me like give you a step-by-step way to gut a deer. Let me give you a step-by-step process of how to make this dinner that Manny like, you know, like you could almost cook it from the first version of the story, you know. So as I was going through and cutting, a lot of that stuff, you know, turned into like 3 lines instead of 2 pages. But that's just interesting to me to learn, you know, like when you think about, you know, like everybody has kind of Little House on the Prairie in their mind, like that's what life was like. And, you know, I just kept thinking, do you ever get out of the kitchen? I mean, if you have to do every single thing from scratch, you know, you had to harvest your wheat and then grind your wheat and then make your dough and then it has to rise and then, you know, like, so when I did the part where they kill the chicken to eat for supper, it's like, how long does that even take? You know, like, is it going to take all day? And actually, the whole process probably took 20 or 30 minutes, you know. So it's like, oh, I didn't know that. That's not so bad, you know. Um, and then of course they cook the dinner, but you know, just learning those things and you know what was available. Like I did a lot of research while they were on the wagon train. Like what wild would be growing at that time that they could use to kind of supplement their food and what herbs or would they find mushroom? I mean, like what's out there? I mean, you know, we don't go foraging for our food, so you don't even know what you might find. But like when are strawberries ripe? When's garlic ripe? Does garlic even grow wild and that, you know, like I didn't know. I had to just look up everything. So while it's interesting to do all that research, it also takes a really long time, you know, and you just have to check everything. Like, did they have a bathtub? Did they have, you know, it was just, it's just fun.
Yes. So in the overall, between the researching and the writing, about how long does it take you to write a book?
Well, that one took me 7 years, but it's because I was teaching. And
Hmm.
so I would started in the summer. In fact, when I finally did just start it, my friends, me and some teacher friends would all go down to South Padre Island for a week every summer to like decompress from school. And they just finally one year, I mean, I've been talking about it for a long time. They're like, we are going to write this book. Get out a notebook. We're plotting it out right now, you know. And so it's like, okay. I mean, I just needed that push because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do any of it, right? And so through that summer, I got a lot of it written. But then when school started, like just slowly, it just trickled off to nothing because you just never have time when you're teaching. And then at the Christmas break, I'd open it back up and like read what I had written and okay, where was I? And then try to get a little bit more. And then it would just trickle off again. So this little cycle happened for 7 years until finally I got to where it's like, okay, I'm almost there. I'm almost done. I need to get finished. And so what helped a whole lot was when I retired from teaching. And then I could, you know, actually spend time learning about it and reading about writing and going to critique groups and, you know, joined a ACFW and had mentors. And, you know, Lena Nelson Dooley was my first critique leader. And they just taught me so much. And so, yeah, so that took a long time. But then to write the second book, which it was actually originally a novella in one of those Christmas anthologies that I mentioned in my bio, it took like 3 months. You know, I mean, I already knew the characters, I knew the setting. It was much shorter. And so it was just easy to pick up where I left off and create like, you know, part B for Abby and Manny. And then when I got to the third book, which was accepted, that one probably took about 9 months. So I don't know, between the reading for the history part of it and then the actual writing, I'm not very fast. I mean, it takes me probably a year to get it all done. You can maybe see the books up there on that shelf. That's my research for book 4, and it's about Comanches. And if you've read the stories, it's going to be Grady's story. Everybody in the first book gets their own story, so that, you know, is as it comes.
Yeah.
So, you know, that I don't know anything about. Like, and I want to use the right words for Comanche language, and I want to, I mean, like, what is their religion? Do they think being a virgin is important? Do they marry? Do, you know, I mean, like any of that. I don't know anything, you know. So that'll be a lot of fun research too, but it's interesting.
And people say writing is easy. You know,
It's
just
not
sit down
easy.
and it all flows.
No, it's not easy.
No. Well, now that you're retired, but you seem busy, Zaida. You're always doing something. Do you have a regular writing schedule, or do you just go
Well,
with?
I try to. I have my little dry erase board where I have my schedule. Because if I can block out, you know, I do a lot of editing for people, and I can get sucked into their project, and or I need to learn how to do something on Canvas, so I get sucked into that project, or I need to learn how to do a TikTok video, so I get sucked into that. You know, it's just real easy to get distracted by the next new shiny thing. And so if I don't follow some kind of schedule, like everything goes away except the one big project. And then I'll realize it's been 3 days and I haven't written anything. So I try to give myself a block of time, like 2 hours for me to write, and then 2 hours to edit for someone else. I really want to be reading for myself, like craft books, not just for pleasure. So like I can always be learning something new. So give myself an hour on that. And so if I can stick with that, and I try to break it up with like, okay, get up, drink some water, do 20 minutes of exercises or something, come back and sit down, you know, so that I'm not just, I could sit in this chair like 12 hours and not move, you know, and that's not very healthy. So I try to break it up. Sometimes I'm better at it than others, but you know, there's a plan there anyway.
Yeah. No, I
That's
get that. Yeah, Rebecca, go.
I was gonna say that's half the battle is just having a plan, because at least if you have a plan, I need to do these things, even if you have to rearrange it or whatever. Things happen. I know it's sometimes, and
Yeah.
sometimes, you're getting involved in another person's work, and you do need to just keep going, because sometimes it is hard to like pick back up, like you were saying with your own work.
Mhm.
It works that way with projects too for other
Yeah.
people. But having a plan is the first thing. So
Yeah.
Right. Right.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
completely understand about the whole trying to do it while you're teaching. I mean, it's hard. It really
Yeah,
is, and I
it
guard
is.
my free time. My
Mhm.
free time is like gold, and people are like, "Oh, why don't you come over?" I'm like, "Nope, sorry.
Mm-mm.
I'm
Yeah.
writing. I can't, I'm too busy right now." So I
I
get
know
that.
some people talk about like, well, I wake up at 5 in the morning and I write until the kids wake up. And it's just like, well, for 7 years, I was the swim coach at my high school, and we swam at the health club in town, but we had to be out before like they open for the public. So
Mhm.
I woke up for 7 years at 4 o'clock in the morning to go do swim practice at 5.
Yep.
And so I'm like, no, I am not waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning anymore. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it got lots easier after I retired. That made a big, big difference.
Yeah. Don't blame me for not wanting to get up that early and write first thing anymore. So, um, well, then what keeps you motivated to do this? And what
Well,
advice might you give aspiring
yeah.
writers to keep their motivation?
um, I see a lot of people on TikTok that are authors, and they get really discouraged when they get rejections, or that agent doesn't, want to, support them, whatever. And they just like, I should just quit. I'm not any good at this, blah, blah, blah. I think it's a little different for Christians, because we are not writing for maybe the same reason. I mean, yes, I want my books to be successful, and yes, I want people to like them, and if they're selling well on Amazon, or maybe they win a I mean, like, all of that's nice. That's validation. But really, we write to share some sort of story that will help show somebody God.
Mhm.
Maybe a Christian who's not strong, or maybe someone who's never been a Christian, and they can see it in a story and see God's love in a story, and realize, oh, I could have that for me. And so, when in the beginning, when I was getting rejections, and of course I didn't know what I was doing, so I'm not surprised. But still, when I got those rejections, it was just like, oh, okay, well, you must not be the one. I'm sure God has the right place and the right person, and so you're just not them yet. Keep going. And it really never discouraged me, because I knew, i- if this was what God wanted me to do, and it felt like it was, oh, so many little breadcrumbs fell into place to get me where I was supposed to be. Like, there's just no way that wasn't God. And so, if I'm going to trust that He has the plan, and it's going to be His plan, and we just follow His plan, and it will all work out, then it's just like, okay, you weren't the one. Keep going. And it didn't hurt me to get those no's. And so, so if you are a Christian writer, then I just encourage you to believe that God has that plan, and He's given you this gift to be able to write for a reason, and He's given you the ideas for your stories for a reason, and He will bring you what you need. That person to be your critique partner, or the person who can connect you to a publisher, or the agent, or whatever. Um, the person who will help you figure out how to self-publish on your own. I mean, you don't have to go the traditional route, and a
Right.
lot of people don't. That's not necessary anymore. So just trust that it will work out when and how it's supposed to, and you just keep plodding along and do your part and get better and get smarter and learn what you need to learn and meet who you need to meet, and don't give up.
Yeah. Well, leaning on your faith, leaning on that trust of God's given you this gift. So it will carry you through the discouraging times. And it's
Yeah.
not to say we're not going to get discouraged as
Right.
Christian writers, but again, we're coming from a different place. So
Yeah.
we try to
Makes it a
lean
little
forward.
easier.
Yeah. Lean forward into what he has planned for us. You talked about trying to take some time to read craft books. Do you have a current favorite writer's resource, craft book that you like?
Well, the ones that for me have made the biggest difference. So the very first one I read, which again, remember, like I'm at ground zero and know nothing. It was called Take Off Your Pants by Libby something. And that sounds kind of like, excuse me, but it's the difference between being a plotter or being a pantser, like flying by the seat of your pants. And so in her book, she was kind of breaking down how to, plot things and use outlines, and that maybe flying by the seat of your pants isn't quite the best idea. So that got me started. And then the next one I read that I felt like had a big impact was Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And Protected was pretty much finished by that point. I was going through and doing the edits on it with every little thing that I learned at Lena Nelson Dooley's group. So when I read Save the Cat and I went through and looked at like where she said, okay, by here you should be at this point, and by here this should happen. And it was pretty close, like just intuitively it worked out, because I've read 9,000 books in my life. And I think after a while, you just kind of absorb what makes a good story. I mean, like you might not be able to, verbalize that, but it just intuitively, and so I did not really have to tweak a lot to make my book fit what she was saying with her schedule. Then I looked at a class online. It's a website called Udemy, and I'm not positive that's how you pronounce it, but it's Udemy. And you just pay for courses. It can be a course on anything.
Right.
And the course that I bought was The Hero's Journey. And it was like 8 hours of video. And I wrote like 8 or 9 pages, just line by line by line in a spiral, just taking notes. And it was just like a lot. It was just, my brain was full. So I went back and watched it again. I think I watched it like 4 times before I finally really felt like, okay, I get what he's saying here. And there was a lot of like essence versus identity. And it's like, what the heck is he talking about? I'm not real good at those introspective-y kind of things. So I finally figured out what I thought, like what he meant by that. And so I was able to create for myself kind of a spreadsheet thing with the 6 different phases that he talks about, and then the little turning points that get you from 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 3. And so I can use that as my kind of outline, like it's just the big main points. And so I know, okay, well, I'm almost to the midpoint. I use a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. I have a spreadsheet that shows my total word count, and then I type in each chapter so I can see like where I am in the running tally. And so if I can tell, I've only got like 7,000 words before I get to my midpoint, like you're here and you need to be here, like get there. Like, so you're not meandering around and have to come back later and cut all that out. So I really strongly recommend, can y'all hear that? My dog wants out. Buddy, stop. He's going to claw the door down. Anyway, that helps me just to stay focused and, plan what I'm going to do to get from here to here and from here to here so that it's going to be something traumatic enough to create the tension and, conflict and all those things that make a good story. And,
Yeah.
like when I was first writing Protected, it was like, maybe this chapter will do a barn raising. Okay. Like I just was trying to think of things to write, which that did not end up being in the book, but,
Right.
it just helps. So, those have been very impactful for me. The one
Right.
I'm reading right now, which I think I'm on chapter 8, but it's Donald Moss's book, The Breakout Novel, which is kind of an older book, but it's
It
got a
is.
lot of good stuff in it. So I'm excited to get what I can get out of that.
Yeah, his book, yeah, it's still very relevant today.
Mhm.
How to write a breakout novel. So I would think anybody listening to this who's a writer who writes by the seat of their pants is probably breaking out in hives with the way you're discussing
Like, what?
spreadsheets.
I have to do a spreadsheet. No.
Spreadsheets and plotting everything out. So you're obviously a plotter.
Yes.
But
Although, even though you plot it, how many times do you get to this and go, oh, this is so much better. And phew, everything you planned is just gone, but then I just consider that to be my little God nudges. It's like, oh, thank you. Good idea. Here we go. This is going to be fun. So
you go take a different path. You got to leave some flexibility, even as a
yeah,
plotter,
yeah, yeah.
when things pop up, for sure. So that's good. Is there any kind of book that any different genre than what you write that you'd like to write? Is there another idea in the back of your mind somewhere, or something you like
Well,
to write?
yes. And they tell you if you get out of your genre, you're going to lose readers because they're going to be disappointed. That's not what they were expecting. And it's like, well, I guess that could be true. I mean, everybody always gives that John Grisham example because he has all the lawyer books, lawyer books, lawyer books, and then he did that little one called like The Painted House or something,
Right.
and everybody just hated it because it wasn't a lawyer book. And it's like, well, he didn't say it was a lawyer book. Why are you being so
Right.
mad?
That's
But
right.
I would like to write like a mystery murder type thing. Like I like watching those kinds of shows, and but I think there's just so much more very careful planning that you have to put those layers in. So when you get to the end, it's not like, what? How did that happen? You never mentioned any of, like you can't just ta-da, have a surprise at the end. It needs to make sense. And so I think that's a little harder than maybe it looks. So, but it draws to me. I'm interested in that. I don't think I'll ever do any kind of fantasy though, because like I can't think of that stuff. Like that completely make up your own. It's like
Your own
my brain
world.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So
I mean, in a way, we're all making up our own worlds, right? I mean, even your modern, even in a, excuse me, in a real world situation, you're still inventing. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it, and my fantasy, like some of it is real world too. So it's kind of like an offshoot of urban fantasy in a way. So,
Yeah.
But I like to I like to be able to write my own rules, I guess, sometimes.
There you go.
she's feisty that way. So, um, what is coming up next for you? You've got this whole San Antonio series. Now, you mentioned a book 4, but are you working on anything else? Anything else we should look for? Good to know.
Yes, actually, so I did do quite a bit of the research for book 4 already, but when I was at a conference last year, I met with an agent just for the grins. Like, it's okay if I have one, it's okay if I don't. Like, again, that's one of those, if God wants me to have an agent, I'll have an agent. Like, I'm not really worried about it. But he was there and I was there, and it's like, well, let's just see what happens. And so he kind of advised me that if you're writing historical, there's maybe 5 of kind of the big name places that would be interested in something like a Westerny type of historical. But if you're writing contemporary, there's like 20, so it makes a big difference in your chances of, catching somebody's eye. And so again, I'm not really concerned about that. Mostly it's because one of my friends keeps nagging me to do it. And so it's like, okay, is this God telling me to do this, or is this ego telling me to, like, I don't know for sure. So I just feel like if nothing comes from this, then it's fine. And I'll just either self-publish it, or I can go into the publisher where I'm at right now with my San Antonio series. But it's completely different. It's completely out of nothing the same. It's about a rock star, and it's right today, contemporary, and so I think I kind of talked myself into that. I went to a Willie Nelson concert last summer with my brother down in Austin, and it's for 4th of July. So it was like 90,000 degrees outside, and I really didn't want to go. But I've never seen Willie Nelson, and he's old. So I thought maybe I should do this before he dies. So I go, and we waited until it's like one of those all day concerts. There's like 15 different bands that come
He's
on.
famous for his picnic, 4th of July
Yes,
picnic, which
yes,
is what
yes,
they call
yes,
it, and always has
yes.
a series of acts all day long. It's a big
Yeah.
festival, so to speak.
So I am not really a big country fan either. I mean, I like, the big names, but like I don't know anybody. I don't know who's famous in country western right now. Like I know Garth Brooks, like anyway, if you know him, I know him. If you don't, I don't. But anyway, so one of the bands that was playing was a guy named Jason Isbell, I think is his last name. And it's real reverberation in the stadium. It's loud, and like I can't quite really hear the words. If you knew the song, obviously you could sing along, but I didn't know the song. But he was saying something in the chorus that it was like, it sounded like he was saying, "Use me for good." And I was like, is this like a Christian song? What is he singing? And so I liked his voice. He had a really nice voice. And he just felt really down to earth, and I liked him. So when I got home, I looked that song up to see like what were the actual lyrics. And it wasn't a Christian song, but I still liked that song. I liked the "Use Me for Good." I liked that idea. And so then like 2 days later, just scrolling through Netflix, and here's a documentary about him. And it's like, well, that's weird. I just saw this guy and now he's everywhere. And so I watched him, and it talked about how when he was like 17 years old, he was invited to be the lead singer at this pretty successful band. Um, and he just totally fell apart. Like he became an alcoholic. It was just too much for him. He was too young. He's touring, he leaves high school. Um, but still his voice, I mean, like I'm listening to him, and it shows the band, and they're kind of showing how they bring a song that they've been working on, and he's created, and he's like scribbled on a piece of paper. And I just was thinking, gosh, is it possible to write about music well enough that the person reading it has even the slightest idea what that's like? Like, can I describe this? And so then it's like, oh, I wonder if I could write a story about like, a rock band, a rock star. It's such a cliche thing. But it's like I want to now. Now it's in my head. So when I talked with this agent, and he was like, if you had a contemporary, I could. It's like, actually, I have a contemporary idea. So we talked about that a little bit. Plus, my characters are like in their 40s. And, us old people, we get tired of our romantic people being like, 20 years old and perfect. And so I thought, hey, I can write a story for other people. And he kind of cracked me up though. So I said, yeah, she'll be in her 40s. Her daughter's about to go to college. And he goes, could she be 39 and a half? And it's like, seriously? It's like, yeah, she can be 39 and a half. I mean, it's like that the cutoff, but anyway. So so that just got me started thinking about it, and so I'm up to chapter 12. So, and it's a lot easier to write contemporary than it is to write historical. I've learned that, but it's
Yeah.
just fun. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
It sounds fun. Sounds, but it's interesting where you get your ideas like that.
Yeah.
How writers and
Yeah.
Rebecca, do something.
Huh?
You were.
What?
Did I interrupt you? Sorry.
No, I was
Okay.
just saying, um, I don't know, I was thinking about the 39 and a half thing, and also what she said about historical versus contemporary, and I was just agreeing because I completely understand the difference in the historical thing. The research just takes forever.
Yeah.
And, in contemporary, although contemporary, I found writing about real towns is a problem too. 'Cause
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm gonna make up one the next time I write about do some
Yeah.
contemporary stuff because, oh my
Well,
goodness.
the trick I've learned is you can be thinking of your own. I could be thinking of my own hometown, but just give it a different name, and nobody,
Yeah,
describe
Yep.
what you
yeah,
see,
Yep.
whatever, and nobody will know. It's
Right.
hard to come up with names. That's hard. But
Well, you have to look
yeah,
on a map. Like again, a story set in Texas currently, we would have to look on a map because how many small towns are there in
I
Texas?
know. I
And you
know.
want to name your town, and you got to make sure
Right.
there's already not
Not
a.
one. Yeah. Although I'm sure you could, there's got to be one somewhere. But that's the thing. When you're writing historical, like this was a complete accident that somebody noticed this. When the wagon train was on its way down, I had chicken coops on the side of the wagon, and they were carrying chickens, so they would have eggs, and they could start their little flock when they make it. And so I had one of the little kids, there was baby chicks, like animals and little children can give you lots of humorous moments. And then someone said, "Oh, there's no way that happened. Eggs Hens will not lay eggs while they're stressed, and they definitely won't sit on them while they're stressed, and this would be stressful." It's like, "Oh, well, shoot." I have to take that out.
wow.
But, and I didn't know that. I've never had
Yeah.
chickens. And so, somebody somewhere would be reading this book going, "Oh, this isn't true," and so you want to always make sure that you've checked and that it's going to work that way. But you don't know if you don't know. So it's always a danger.
Ziva's back there.
You're laughing at your dog.
I am. She's found a squeaky toy of all things. We're trying to record something audible, she's gonna go over here and squeak things. But anyway, she's just trying to have her voice heard, I guess.
She is. Well,
Yeah.
Paula, whether you when you finish this contemporary rock and roll story, I want to read it. And
Okay.
because I love the idea how you
Yeah.
know got your inspiration for it. And also I think if you wrote a murder mystery, you'd do it really well. Because I think you could sprinkle the red herrings in there and the clues through there. I think that'd be quite fun.
I
So,
think it would be fun. I think it's a learning process, but it would be fun. And one of my critique partners writes like mystery things like that, so she could help me. But
there you go. See,
yeah,
when you know
But
somebody.
that's what the editing round is for, right?
that's
You
right.
just
Yeah,
have to go, you write it, and then you figure out who really did it, and then you go back and
yeah.
put all that stuff back.
Well, here's what I thought I would do: just find one of those documentaries on TV. Go to Netflix; they've got a zillion of them, and like
Yeah.
figure out what the crime was, and then like, okay, now just bring that to your computer and change it up enough that it's like
Mhm,
a different story, but you can
mhm.
see how they thought they were going to get away with it, and then the one thing that somebody stumbled across that gave it all away, and I don't know, I just think that would be fun.
It
Hey, go for
it would.
it. All right. Before Ziva gets too excited back there, why don't you tell people your website, where they can find you on social media, that kind of thing, if they want to read more about your books and find you.
Okay, my website is paulapeckham.com, and it's Peckham when you spell Peckham. um, and then I'm on Facebook. I have an author page and a personal page. They're both public. um, I'm trying to do TikToks. I do think that works, doing book talk on TikTok. I just bought a book because I saw the lady on TikTok and she was funny. And I thought, well, if she's funny, the book's probably going to be funny. And I loved it. I loved the book. So, I think there's truth that you can actually sell your books on TikTok. So you just have to figure out what you're going to do. So I'm looking at that. And then I'm on Twitter, or whatever we're calling it now, but it's pretty much dead. And I'm trying to be on Instagram, and I'm trying to be on what's the new one, Threads, but I just don't have time for any of that stuff. So I do it every now and then. And it's like so that it doesn't die off completely. But it's not my most fun thing to do is to be on Facebook. So that's the one that gets the most attention, I guess.
There you go. Facebook or paulapeckham.com. Paula, thank you so much for being here. Again, the whole San Antonio, well, the first 3 books of the San Antonio series, I guess there's a book 4, which I didn't know till today.
There will be a 4 and a 5 and a 6 if I don't get tired of it. So
So we'll read the first 3. Start with Protected, which is book 1. And they're all out now for those of you who like to read series and you don't want to wait. So you can get the first 3 going, and then maybe book 4 will be out after that. Again, thank you so much, Paula. We do appreciate your time. I love talking to other writers, especially fellow Texans along the way. So, all right, folks, for next month, we will be talking to Liz Tolsma about her split time book, What I Promise You, and that's in May. And then after that is Uncertain Road. Do I have my dates backwards? Anyway, by Abby Downey.
That's right. June is, yeah.
June is Abby Downey for An Uncertain Road. We are on YouTube at Rebecca and Rebecca. You can find us at RebeccaandRebecca.com. We are on Spotify, anywhere you do podcasts as well. So we hope you'll find us so you can enjoy great conversations with writers like Paula and read more about books again. So we will see you next month with Liz Tolsma and the book What I Promise You. And meanwhile, keep reading. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.